also singers and tap dancers and choreographers, and sang in French, and went to Paris, and it was
wow, your childhood.
That was just the black side of the family.
Right. Now you're going to tell the audience you have this amazing ethnic combination, and the world loves ethnic combinations, man. The more disparate and unpredictable and impossible they seem, the more voracious the appetite for them. Oh my God! So yours is like having dinner. I'll say that to the audience. It's a good dinner, whichever side of your family serves it. Because I've lived in New Orleans and have enjoyed Creole, and I'm Italian, and had mangia tutte guis Eduardo. What? Like I've never ate enough. I'm skinny, so all they want to do is force feed me to death in both cultures. So please begin with both sides of your family, your lovely family.
Oh, well, I'm half Italian, and I'm actually half black, which I say often that it means I'm Puerto Rican. And and it seems like that because my family always seemed to listen to a lot of Latin or bossa nova music. So I never could tell. I feel like I come from light-skinned black people, but dark-skinned white people.
And actually, aren't those really the two most in vogue in America? If you had to pick from the whole palette, those are the two hottest shades, Maya DiGiorgio. Also, I've been all day today, because I kept jotting it down, and then the other night, DiGiorgio, do you mind? Is it like the famous DiGiorgio pasta brand? How is DiGiorgio spelled? Do you do the hyphen? D hyphen?
It's a D-I space capital G.
I love you. Can I just say that? I don't care who you're married to, and I'm sure you're doing great, but I'm just going to register now in your club. I had a kid sit next to me in school. His name was Joey DePiro, and he had the same thing, the D, then the space, and I come from a family of DiVizios, which forget it. So, all right, so this is why there's an immediate I loved you on stage. What would make it that you would like the rough and tumble world of comedy? Yes, on stage when you kill, it doesn't matter what city, it doesn't matter what language, love, connection. It's not the easiest of the performing professions. Travel, clubs, guys, late, this, that. How did that strike you when you saw what the environment was going to be?
I think it didn't hit me till I was already working a lot, and I get very focused into the craft. So I think that the hardest part was realizing that no matter how good you get, you still are always dealing with rough circumstances, especially as a woman in comedy, and you're also dealing with something where I'd say pretty much when you're not only on the road, but audiences are difficult, and especially when you're discussing diversity in different parts of the world. I've had fights where I'm discussing my family, and I've seen white people jump up and start screaming at me, and I've had black people jump up and start screaming at me.
See, I knew you and I'd be fast friends. I had a similar experience, not on these subjects, but what was your thought? Well, I was playing a room, and the wife was having the best time. He wasn't budging. Then he jumped up and yelled at me that he didn't need to hear all the stuff that his wife was yelling at. I was laughing at. In your situation, right? I mean, his wife was happy. He's yelling at me. I almost said, dude, I am helping you with this relationship. Would you shut up? And she smiled. No, so he had to yell at me. He walked out. What did you think? What do you think when somebody has been so provoked? I mean, there is a certain success as an artist. You come from a family of artists. This is part of what artistry is provocation. What about when they jump up? Tell me about that. That makes you fascinating to me in the audience.
Well, there's two things that happen. When someone jumps up, there's an automatic challenge for me. So for me, I mean, there's two things that are going on. You want to be booked in the club again, so that also goes to your bookability, because the audience, club owners get upset. They're not happy with that. However, for me, the charge as an artist, I do know, and I've spent enough time around people like George Carlin, who was a big help to me years ago when I first started. You're connecting to a point where that's where you should go. Now, it gives you a problem when you're working because these clubs, like I said, they just want it to be simple and for people to laugh. But for you to really tread on new ground, on things that will irritate people, that is a sore spot, that's when you are in a zone to become noticed, where you're heading towards an HBO special as opposed to just a regular local club that picks up local talent. But there's always a price that you pay when you walk out on that line. For me, it's almost like I get juiced up. I've had so many people attack me in the past when I've been on stage that from there, it's just, I can just go. I can make an entire person show. The more they get upset or the more trouble they give even other comedians before I walk on the stage, that to me is like, I just start to salivate. I get really excited.
Right. That is, you're being set up at that point to be your best self. That's when you really are going to put the signature in the sky like Batman or Mighty Mouse. They're not even going to know what happened, but they are so going to goddamn love it. All right, let me just remind people who you are. We're not in a rush, are we? You're on at noon. No. Good, because I have a million more questions, and we have millions of listeners all across the world. I'll tell you, because you're one of the few guests I've had on recently who would get this. I have a lot of people from politics and psychology barfing on me every day trying to tell me what I see on the news. So my show is heard on what are called Part 15 radio stations across America. What are they? They're town licensed. They don't go all across the metro, town by town. Now, do you know what this permits us to do? We are equal to the satellite. We do not have language barriers. We do not have subject matter barriers. We cannot be shut down because somebody complains to the FCC. That begins at the 10,000 watt level. So as towns, it's amazing. Our country, this uptight, anal retentive thing now, really started out in 1920, allowing towns to have their own radio. Now, what we did in the modern day, my network, is they used the internet to string them together behind the scenes. Instead of putting out millions of watts, they just connect town to town to town for simultaneous coverage. So you don't use the electricity, you don't have these big antennas, but everybody is simultaneously live.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I tell you something, it is badass. I'm a 40-year broadcaster, Maya. I'm 58 talking to you, and believe me, when I was 17 and 18, well, I got paid on stage when I was 14 for the first time. Got my first on stage, right, I was 14-year-old. That's how bad it was in the Bronx. You needed to get on stage before you got to jail. I'm not lying to you. It was called reform school. You could wind up in reform school if you couldn't dance or sing or tell jokes, because if the cops don't laugh, they throw you in the car. I'm not. Yeah, I know. I apologize.
That's awesome.
It's your interview. It's your interview. We're learning you, but I just wanted to let you know.
Actually, I understand exactly what you're talking about. I used to have a morning show in New York. So, and we were constantly, the FCC was coming in and out of there every week. We were in trouble in a meeting. So,
right. You know that meeting. You know that meeting where you all of a sudden, all right, come in here. And the first thing you say in the hallway is, what in the fuck could we have possibly done to get this guy in such an uproar? And then right away, then they say to you, do you know what you did? And you go, no, I don't think exactly. I think everybody laughed. Well, you said this, then you said that, and then this lady called me. My whole career.
And then they get mad at you because they're going, well, we're sliding behind Stern. We're behind Stern only in the mornings. Can you catch up?
Yeah.
Not if you shut me up every 3 lines.
That's right. Howard and I were a tandem. I was a midday. Yes. I was a midday add-on. Like if you're a station in the middle of someplace and you order Howard for the morning, syndicated, they used to send me if you needed a second show. Like, do you need a midday show? Ed Tyll comes behind. Because as you know, he used to stay on all morning and never knew when he was going off. So that was my gig. My gig was to wait until he was done. Anyway.
Yeah, I did know that.
I actually love you so much now that you did morning radio, because here's what I admired. Here's what I want you to tell the audience about. You have a certain pioneer stock on stage. These other little performers the other night, they were adorable, but they were so afraid to be up there if they didn't have the right joke, and you really came to stay. What happens at this point in your career when you're setting up for an evening with an audience? this is like working out in the gym for an athlete. This is like Pollock throwing the paint across the room. What's your joy of when it happens for you?
Just telling the truth. You know, I played an audience a few weeks ago in Cape Coral. The first few shows, I know the whole room gasped when I told them that I was half black, and they did not. I was killing for a half an hour. As soon as I told them that my mother was black because I look white, the whole room just didn't want. No matter what I said, no matter how easy the jokes were I threw, they were gone. Period. So it got to a point where by the last night I did my comedy, what I believed is the truth, whether they were ready to listen to it or not. And it was very funny. They were very tight. But I walked off stage and I felt that, for me, that was the joy, because I represented me and my beliefs. There's so often as comedians, as a comedian, even a younger comedian, when I was first starting, I was creating jokes that I think would have gotten an easy laugh. But when I really looked at them, they were actually more racist than the strong statement of the truth, which they were more scared of. But if I had put it into a simple format of a set-up punch, it would actually come off even more offensive, but that was acceptable.
Well, you see now, that's an important point right there. One of the things that happens when it gets too mechanized, whether it's the news or it's the comedy, everything is too automated. It does cheat people who like it out of the real story. You really have withheld something. Get to the quick urge laugh. Skirt goes up, guy falls down, banana peel. This is how it all started with, look at that. And get off the urge a little bit, and then it becomes awesome. But you're right, it does. What's the word? It's like a shorthand. It's like shorthand. You shorthand it to get it to that formula. So the other night, you certainly weren't in the formula. How much fun is it to not be in the formula? It
was probably, it's the highest feeling that I could ever feel. I mean, I sometimes I go into clubs and someone sends me a cocktail or this. I had a cup of tea, went on stage, and was able to just be myself completely.
Right.
Completely. And I didn't even know where I was going to go. But there's something that I think that organically happens in the room, and I know some people in comedy, especially club bookers, say, well, we want you to start with this joke and end with that joke. Something is organically happening to me, especially this year. I'm getting my love of comedy back, and there's something I need to say more than I need for you to laugh.
Oh, my God.
I need for you to say,
that's the, I can tell you right there, that's the sound bite. When I start hyping, I replay these interviews we have live. I have a best of on the weekend, and I take all my. That's going to be your tease line, because I believe, isn't that the difference between performing and art? I mean, a lot of performance is not art, and it's not pretending to be, and they don't mind not being art. But if you really want to do something artful, there really is a temptation to not do it artfully. They'll make it easy for you to do it unartfully. So why do you love that? Why do you think it's the gene pool you talked about before? You just come from people who know this, and you instinctively know it. You have a DNA strain. That's.
I do. There's always been an issue, though. That was my point of view in my life because of the way I grew up. I mean, now there's a ton of mixed kids, but coming up, there wasn't many of us, and I think that I never really fit. And I wanted to tell a story to which is my family. They tell your family story so you can get the sitcom. So I told my story to the white rooms, but then they had their weird protocols, and that's not really you, and can't talk about your family, but don't talk about, how are you going to talk about Italians, but not talk about food and how that they're Italian.
That's right.
Then it looks crazy.
Right.
And they wanted me to wipe that out. Then I went to the black rooms, and they wanted me to be super, and they weren't like middle-class black rooms. These were like hip-hop comedy rooms.
Right.
They wanted me to be edgy and quick and snappy and dirty, and I couldn't do that.
Right.
So I've always had a challenge, and then one day I met Whoopi Goldberg. And I said, for me, I'm one person, and then as soon as I bring up what I am or bring up my family, I instantly people see me completely different. They just get it's like a cognitive dissonance is what happens. And it's a very uncomfortable moment. And she actually said to me, she said, what it is you're doing has to mean enough to you that no matter what anyone says, you're going to continue to do it. And it took me a long time to understand what that meant. It wasn't me getting a laugh. It wasn't me becoming famous. And I think a lot of the comedians now, a lot of women especially, are getting bluer and bluer and more and more crass. I don't think it helps the cause. I don't think it brings us forward. I think what it does is it makes the room feel almost like you're in a strip club, and the room gets rapey when you start. It feels rapey. It feels uncomfortable.
Right.
It's no longer that they're there for comedy. And someone said, well, I talk about my vagina on stage, and I said, and they laugh. I said, are they laughing or are they hooting and hollering like you're in a strip club?
Right. You nailed it, because the dark side of the small rooms across the country really do ride that edge. If they put three comics in a room, I've done a lot of these shows where it's like three people, and man, if the other two are all about it, like they come out cheering, like they're gonna, I don't know what's gonna happen, but it goes right from cheering to whose wife am I on, and what is this, the show? Or that's the comedian right now. He's grabbing himself, and he's menacing, and he's already on the woman in the front row. Say, Jesus God, what happened to knock? Where's knock knock? How come he doesn't say knock knock? There's a lot of people.
It's not even the men so much anymore. If you go into the comedy store, because I live in Los Angeles, so if I'm at the comedy store or any of these clubs, it's the women. It's all coming from Lisa Lampanelli, and they're watching, what's her name, Sarah Silverman, and it's becoming, they're going to say, as crass a bunch of humor as I had to follow some girl doing a blowjob song in Vegas.
Right.
She did a serenade.
Right.
So how do you follow that with clean humor?
Right. Now you guys want to think about anything? No, we want another blowjob real fast. Yeah.
And so I have to find humor in the whole setup. The whole setup of how ridiculous a situation I'm put in without offending the comedian who went before me, but still making my point and standing my ground, and it works. But I think that it comes to a point where you got to go. When the grain is now becoming about nothing but sex and ego and putting each other down, because the core of the humor is insulting or humiliating. It's all, I'm going to insult, I'm going to humiliate myself and insult you. And it's losing, for me, I've lost the love of comedy being in those rooms.
Well, you know what?
Maybe it's my instinct to swim the opposite way, but that's what's giving me the fuel.
Wow. Maya DeGiorgio is our guest. The Ed Tyll Show, Starcom Radio Network, AM/FM stations across America, from coast to coast in all time zones. And, as I mentioned, be listening. If you're just tuning in the middle of this, don't worry, it'll be on Saturday with the best of, because this is really a special opportunity for us. Maya DeGiorgio is a well-known comedian and filmmaker in show business, and I was lucky enough to be visiting a friend who had a show, and Maya turned out to be the delight of the evening for all of the reasons you're hearing in this dialogue. So a couple of things. A, where should people love now when they hear an interview like this, they love to know where they should be following you, so they could stop listening to me ask you questions. They just start reading your website. Say, enough, Ed. She's terrific. Where do you want them? You want them on the Facebook? Where would you like the new...
I think the Facebook is always the best, where you can actually, if you put in my name, which is such a hard spelling, it's Maija, or go to Hollywood Outlaw. Everything Hollywood Outlaw on the web is mine. My personal website's attached to it. All of my handles all connect me to it as well. So if you can't spell Maya, which is Maija, and DiGiorgio, which is DiGiorgio, or funnymaya.com. I have that one as well. But just put in my name and you'll see all the different links. But
awesome.
You can also, if you can't spell any of that, Hollywood and then Outlaw.
You're great. All right, you're great. All right, so that takes care of that crowd. All right, so now back to me and the rest of us who love what you're doing up there. Everybody, and you got in long before Amy and Tina Fey, but everybody is waiting to hear the rest of the shoes drop on Cosby. I mean, I was an I Spy fan. I was so bad with I Spy that my best friend and I used to mimic I Spy after the episode was on in elementary school the next day. Who's Kelly? Who's Scott? And I still remember the throwaway jokes. You know, they had a framework for their humor. It was involving the episode, but they would always say, such as yourself, sir. Yes, they would do this mimicry of British over politeness to each other. And me and Pat Horgan used to do this. So I was, and I had Noah album. I had Wonderfulness, the go-karts. I mean, this guy wrecked if he's wrecking lives, I'm wrecked. Because he's really been, if I'm hanging out with the wrong guy. So when you went in, I did. I not only laughed, but you must have felt how people like me were like, oh, thank you. Why'd you go there? What do you think about how you went there? How'd you come up with how you got there? Because I loved it, soup to nuts. So go ahead, using that subject as a modern comedian and why you have the take that you do.
Why I have the take that I do is that I've seen Hollywood and I've seen these assaults before on the web. The way the entire thing is laid out is very reminiscent of another person that has used their money and ability to manipulate things that are on the web to slander people. And it happened to me with my film that was shut down. I had filmed with Richard Belzer. He was the executive producer. And all of a sudden, somebody didn't like a clip that was on the show. And as opposed to saying, well, they said to take it down. And Michael Moore was a big help for me back then. He said, do not remove it. I didn't remove it. And all these articles about Belzer being a drug dealer and an arms dealer and all these things started surfacing on the web. Well, he had an NBC contract at the time, and still does. So he had to remove them because he had a clause in his contract about bad publicity could have him canceled off of Law and Order. So he buried my film, and he buried it for 3 years, and it took me a lot of time and a lot of lawyers, which Michael Moore helped to get it back. And the clip he thought was important enough to make sure I put in the film, but because he said Michael Moore would have done it, and then we ended up meeting Michael Moore at the festivals, and he sponsored the film into festivals. So I see that the slander that happens on the web, and I've seen it done quite a few times by this same person. That I see a series of weird-looking articles that don't look like they're from legitimate sources will appear on the web, about 6 to 10 of them, and then someone will drop something like a backhanded drop. Now, this guy Hannibal Buress does a zillion shows in the middle of nowhere. Now, you know how many crazy stuff comedians say on stage about other comedians? No one picks it up.
Not only that, I know Hannibal. I knew Hannibal when I saw that happen, I'm just like you. I tuned in one Saturday morning on CNN, and they go, a comedian said, blah, blah, blah. And I go, oh, my God, there's Hannibal. What's he doing? And then I went out of the room, and then half an hour later, the fire is starting, and then the rest of the story. So go ahead, pick it up from there.
It started a little bit longer. It was on the web, and then it kept getting pushed. There's one a slander magazine that's called Daily Mail that kept pushing these stories each time. Now, I believe that if one of these women came forward, or two, it would definitely not be enough. That's the reason why we're seeing this absurd number. And it always has to do with some kind of, every time a slander has taken place, coming from the people that I've seen, it has always been something that's illegal. So that way, people create the impression that some illegal activity is constantly taking place.
Right. Anything operative that you're going to say he did this always has the taint of illegality, so they don't check veracity. They go, oh, you see right away he's willing. So, yes, if you
research it, it also came out of National Enquirer. During the time of the National Enquirer was also a lot of this identical articles that were coming out about Belzer and these other people. So my question is why and why now?
Well, Exactly, right? Doesn't it sound like from the outside that there must be big stakes behind the scenes? Something must be at stake for all of this activity because these people, you know what I mean? Somebody's repping them, somebody's calling, somebody's leaking information. What do you think is at stake here? What is the real game behind the scenes? This is just to get money? They just smell?
No, it's not money. And it's not money from those women. Those women, I believe, are being paid right now. And I think that they're being paid by whoever it is that's trying to discredit him. Because the job is about discrediting. It's taken this long for someone to pick up this Gloria Allred to come and start picking up cases.
Right. So
it's not about money. What it really is about discrediting him so that no one will listen to him if he comes forward with information on something. And that's truly what I believe.
And bury his legacy?
I believe he knows something that someone's trying to bury him.
Right. He's either got something that he knows, and that would make it worth burying his legacy, because it looks like that's the angle, right? You can castigate. Oh, that's the wrong word. You can yell at him enough that there's been enough yelling. He's finished. If you just keep yelling at him, you can. Wow. So now let's get back to you. All right, enough about him. This is still
if you look at all the women, all the stories don't make sense. I mean, I slept with him. I went with him on 6 vacations, and then all of a sudden, he's been raping me the whole time.
I love your one where you did.
The Law and Order. Why are we reporting the Law and Order woman? Why are we reporting her? The Law and Order lady turns around and she says, he invited me to his house. Did you go? No. Did he rape you? He could have. I mean, what are you talking about? It also started with 8 women that were said. It started with like 9 women on the web. It said 9 women that are Jane Does. These are 9 random articles claiming they're Jane Does, and all of this started out of something that happened back in the day, which was coming out of the National Enquirer. When has anyone taken the National Enquirer and believed anything that they said?
What did it take though for you to decide on stage to go with this and then go hard with your point of view? Because this really ties into what you said earlier. This is a club world. This is a marketing world. That's ballsy, and you just seem to be enjoying it so much, and it was really great. So talk to me about putting it into the act.
It just happened. I can't stop it. Nothing motivates me more than just like when something I see that's unjust and I see the majority of people are buying into what the easy thing is, and someone who worked as hard as Cosby, I wouldn't even be on the mic if it wasn't for Cosby. Pryor wouldn't even be on the mic if it wasn't for Cosby. Everybody came from Cosby. So when something is that wrong, somebody needs to say something. Somebody needs to say something. And if I can make it funny, if you really look at these women, not one of them has an ounce of credibility. I'm sorry, I know that people say, well, Cosby's done everything for the world, and all these women are at Playboy parties. Literally, they're at Playboy parties, they have this problem, they have that problem. Let Debbie Allen come forward. Let Felicia Rashad come forward. A woman who's really done something serious, let her come forward. Then maybe I'll believe it. Not women that look like they would take, you walk on the street in Hollywood, and I could give out money to any woman to come forward for some TV time and some cash.
Maya DiGiorgio is our guest. It's the Ed Tyll Show, Starcom Radio Network. I'm laughing. I have to clear my throat because you're really killing me now. You are so bold and yet so funny. When another young lady is listening somewhere in some place, and she says, Jesus, I'd like to do that. I don't like Azalea, and I don't like this one, and I'm going to... Would you warn them, say, girls, please, don't try to do this. This is really a lot more difficult than I make it look. What do you say? Because you are really threading needles. Do I feel over-flattering to you? You could tell me, say, dude, don't flatter the shit out of me just because you... I'm not.
No,
I'm a performer.
I take the flatter.
Good for you.
The truth is I really feel like with every time you step out with your opinion, you're going to get hit.
Correct.
You get blindsided. I don't think doing comedy is good for anybody. I really don't. I think though that this is something has happened for my life that I need to be doing comedy. I stopped doing it for a long time, but opportunities in my life only seem to keep pushing me in that direction. But do you know that every time you open your mouth, you know, you're going to get hit? And Whoopi warned me that day. She said, do you realize that you're going to be paying a price? With that independence, this is a quote, with that independence comes a price. But if you're willing to pay the price of being an individual, you'll be fine.
All
but
right,
if you're not,
yeah.
Step to the side.
Right. Well, I love her, so I thank you for transferring that, because we can all use what she just advised. But I'd like to, you know, I hate this phrase, but I'm going to use it. Let's drill down a little deeper. Remember last year it was, let's unpack that issue. Let's unpack it. And you said, unpack my fucking ass. It was a sentence. No, let's unpack it. Let's be. So now then they go, could we drill deeper on that? And I'm like, what are you, a fucking root canal? You know, just ask the question. Don't tell me you're drilling deeper. But I just did it, the cliche. A little deeper says to me, it must matter to you, issue by issue, or you wouldn't summon up the energy, the deliberateness. I know you're drawn to it, but once you're drawn to it, it's not like you don't have to do anything when you get there. They're handing you an M16. It's heavy. You have to fire it correctly. You did it like a pro. I'm just so interested in that experience today. Does that really make, in the end, is it worth it? And then we could go right into the film after this. When you work on something special, does it satisfy that urge that so many, even in adolescence, want? I want to get myself out there. I want to be me. I want to look in the mirror and say this. Tell us, because you're doing what I think every young one would say, that's it. Maya's doing it. She's not taking shit. She's saying what she believes. She went out on a fucking limb and nailed it. So, you know, what is that? Are you a fighter pilot and there's only 0.001%?
Yeah, I don't like the fact that I've chosen the route. It's been a very brutal road. It's brutal, and I don't know what the benefit is. I mean, my family is very upset because they're like, you know, you don't ever take the easy, straightforward, and it's you know, and when you're a woman too, you get it's just because you're crazy, because of this, because of that. They want to put everything on you. When you're an ethnic, you're crazy. When you're a woman, you got problems. The fact is, I can't stand things. I can't stand wrongs, and I feel better at the time when I do them. I don't know if they're the best for me, and I don't know if that voice actually does carry as far as I hope it will go. But it's something that I have to do, and it's something that I really can't control as much as I would like to. I mean, I'm good in a room. It's not like I'll jump up and yell. But when you give me a mic and I feel as there's an injustice, and I can make a difference, even if it's just a little bit on my Facebook page or something, if I can make a difference by helping people think about, like, I like to focus on racial issues, because I think that when you have both sides of the family that don't like each other, at a Thanksgiving, I have a message, because I'm the progress. I'm the one they both are invested in. I'm the one they love and want the best for. So regardless of, like, my grandparents being incredibly racist, they loved me and couldn't have done more for me. And so that's the progress. So I do believe that we can have progress, but I don't think it comes without sometimes being uncomfortable. And sometimes comedy can bring you through that, and sometimes people aren't willing to hear that on their time where they're chilling out and relaxing and want to just laugh about something. But that's my battle. I feel like sometimes I just got to give people a fun show. And sometimes but I ultimately like for it to be a fun show where you walk away thinking about stuff, and it adds when you're in that moment later on. You know, comedy does come back to you, and you think of something, and that comedy comes back to something that Mel Brooks did, or, you know, something that Cosby had said, and it just makes you laugh in that moment, and it releases the pressure. That's what I'd like to be able to do. And if I can only do it to 10 people, then I do it for 10 people. If I could do it for 1 million people, it would, millions of people, it would be great.
That's it. Like that's the definition right there, right? If you love it, doing it for 10, if it all comes through, if the experience happens, it is a little bit like magic. It is a little bit like a conjuring up. You get to that right energy, you jump in that space, and it's a real experience. Who's ever there, it does feel like the Gladiator Stadium is full. You feel humanity, back, forth, back, forth. So that is the bargain, right? You make the bargain.
It comes to motives here. And I have to check myself sometimes even on my motives, always and daily. And you probably think about that in life and relationships, in business. And I think that for me, I, very, very young, had a teacher who used to say, is the world a better place because you're in it? And if it's not, you need to rethink what you're doing.
Wow.
So, I could try to make money, or I could try to put those, I want to be famous. Are those the motives? And those have never been my motives. It's, this is where I can add the most. I might not, ever get the great blessings of being the great comedian, but am I making a difference?
God,
am I helping?
love you. All right, so here's the
adding?
thing. Yeah, but see, here's the thing, right? Okay, so now I am secretly, you don't know me until I call you today and saw you there. But I've been on this plane. I've been in the back of the plane the whole time. This plane is full of people, but I'm back there too. That's exactly it. I had all these A's when I was a kid. Edward. And then Edward become nuts. I was the youngest talk radio host. You know what? You'll laugh in irony. Certainly it's not a happy day. But they threw me on the air one night as a kid. They go, Ed, it's Monday night. Nobody will be listening. It's safe to put you on. Swear to God, I was a kid. They go, could you? Right. No one will listen. It's Monday Night Football. No one listens to the station. You go on, just say hello, Boca Raton, ask them how they're doing, and get the hell off the show. Do you mind? I said, okay. I'm a kid. So I swear to you, my hand to God, I was on the air 55 minutes. John Lennon was murdered. I had to stay on all night till 6 in the morning, just constant phones, crying, singing, the audience, the world, the TV. We didn't have any CNN. We were just scrambling to get a signal with the rabbit ears. And that was my baptism of fire in Miami, the whole metro area. They heard me from, yeah. So, you know what I mean? Like this, there is something about, God forbid somebody who didn't give a crap about anything was on that night. I don't even know who John Lennon is. What's happening? I knew every lyric. I knew where he was born. I knew what his bicycle looked like. I knew what bus they took to practice for the Beatles. So there I was, a squirt. I sounded like 11, the falsetto, 20-something voice there. And it was, so I believe in us. You know what I mean? I don't mean, I am not co-opting your genius. I am not co-opting your anything. I'm just saying I'm on that plane. I'm only here because I wanted to make something get done. It would be so easy if you would talk to me at 18 and say, what's the difference? Why don't you just go to, I went to a semi-Ivy League school. I turned down I hated all that. Then I went to law school. I thought I was going to stab everybody in the class. I did. I have to protect America from when these people become lawyers.
Awesome.
I swear to you. And guess who my teacher? I don't mean to bore you, but the guy walks in the class.
You're not.
The guy walks in the class and he goes, I just want to welcome you people to evidence class. And we go, okay, evidence, He goes, I just finished the Nixon pardon. That was his job. He wrote the Nixon pardon.
Wow.
And then I said, should we kill this fucking guy right now? I said, who wants to run? Who wants to make a run for the front of the room and get in the Miami Herald? Let's go. We could hold him down. He wrote the Nixon part. Then you want to fucking come near me? What do you want me to listen to you or incarcerate you? What do you want me to do? Yeah, so I was,
So radio was the perfect place for you to end up.
Oh, definitely. We're running out the fucking door. I went running off the campus, and then I was like, I'm not stupid. I was born in the Bronx, and I'm in Miami. I went and found this radio station right on the ocean. I said, this will be fine. I said, I'll go work right here, right in Biscayne Bay. It was on 710 Brickell Avenue, and whatever. But that's how I really broke out, because there was all these people. They didn't give a shit. Radio, they didn't care. I completely cared. Oh, God, this. Oh, God, that. So when you tell me that you're still motivated by personal and, what you view as an injustice, you won me over the other night, because I need truth in my entertainment. And I don't call it entertainment. That's a cheap shot. It's more art. Entertainment is honestly, any stupid thing for a split second, a commercial, a thing on TV, a guy with a costume on. But if I can get a little bit of truth and experiential exchange, I honestly do feel my life is better. I think this does work, but we're not in a world that seems to buy this. What? How do you surmise? Like you look back at 14. Jesus H. Christ. What was it? 1963? I swear to God, the Watts riots. Does everything go back to zero like there was no generation? I said this all last year. So we're back to zero. You take Trayvon Martin and you take Ferguson. I guess it's a racist. It might as well be fucking, South Africa all over again.
Yeah, I have to say one of the things that bothered me, it was years ago when when I was doing that morning show. I was working for Hot 97, and I was on the morning show with Ed Lover. And every morning, and it was funny because it was two white people that would program all the hip hop. And that was the flagship station. And every hip-hop station with Hot 97 would make it a hit. They would put it on a playlist, a certain song, and they would make you a hit. And everybody followed the flagship because that was the first hip-hop station in the nation.
Correct.
Now, when I first started comedy, hip-hop was positive, and I had a roommate that was a rapper, and he did this really dark album, and they dropped him from the record label because they said no one will play this on the radio because hip-hop is about a positive message. Even Public Enemy was a social awareness message, even though they got, Public Enemy and NWA did get this blanket thing that they were this horrible gangster rap, which wasn't true. They were speaking of the realities of police brutality and things that were happening within the system. When I got to Hot 97 years later, it was two white people that were programming all of this violent, sexist rap music. And when someone would come in with something positive, they couldn't get airplay. And their demographic was 8 years old to 16 years old. So for 8 to 16 years old, at 5 o'clock in the morning when they're getting ready for school, we would play kill people, be a thug,
right,
forget your education,
right,
and these are hoes and disrespect them. And we actually had Pimp Magic Don Juan from Pimps Up and Hose Down come on the air, and they were trying to get him to tell the audience how to turn their women out as he was trying to talk to me. I don't know who he thought he was talking to. And I said, this is what your demographic is. This isn't like the goth movement.
Right.
This isn't punk rock.
Oh, man.
What you're doing is you're playing right into what everybody has worked so hard to change, including, which is the key person, was Bill Cosby, who could have gone the opposite way, and he's trying to move people towards education and positive community, which is where all of hip-hop started. And now they've brainwashed our entire society to play into the negative stereotypes where, this fear of a black planet was talking about from Public Enemy, warned against people's negative stereotypes of black males that were getting black males killed. Here we are now having this become the fad, the fashion, which is fashioned right back into the negative stereotype worse than it ever was.
Talking to Maya DeGiorgio, you're amazing, all right? Because your vocabulary is what's you get the audience has an intellectual Woody right now. Even lesbians are getting intellectually soaked listening to you. No, I swear. You know why? Because I'm not. Again, I don't want to flatter you. It's a bullshit world when every time you get a goddamn compliment because somebody wants to get their hand in your pocket. I'm going to tell you, you're using a vocabulary right now that I've worked on for 40 years. I am a practitioner. I'm a journeyman. I don't ever want to know. There's no masterpieces. The Middle Ages is over. I'm all about journeymen. You sound like a journey person. You sound like unbelievably how this is. I believe I'm hearing more than you. I believe I don't know who influences you. Now you rattled off big names. If Carlin can have an effect in somebody's life, I would imagine it's like a droplet of radioactivity. He continues to give and give and give and give and give and give and give to you. Who else has got in your bouillabaisse recipe of when you see stuff, you know what to do or you know how you, because you're so facile. See, you got me now. See how you used a couple of nice words? I love words. I never get to use them, so everybody's a fucking idiot in this world, and I can't ever talk to anybody, and they don't know what I mean. But you're so facile with such difficult things. What's that about? Who really got to you about heavy lifting? Go. You said Whoopi. Whoopi said you'll pay a price. Go in.
Whoopi said you pay a price. Carlin, more than even what he said to me about comedy, was he told me, because people had shut down my film, and he said, You can't let them win. You can't let them win.
Right.
You got to stick it to them. That was the last time I saw him before he died.
All right.
He said, you have to stick it to him. You can't let people get away with this stuff. I mean, I love what I love about Pryor is his ability to communicate the message to everyone. He wasn't like a Paul Mooney where he would just blatantly say it. He could create a world and make you understand it.
You mentioned Paul Mooney, though. See, who else in this world is even going to reference him? I know the audience knows him. I saw him recently. Oh, my God, in those specials toward the thing where he's like it's basically a one-man show. All he talks about is Richard. So please illuminate.
He has to talk about Richard because he would have no career without Richard.
Well, tell us.
And he was not a friend to Richard.
Right.
And he in any such way, shape, or form, and it's such a for someone who is, and he's probably going to be furious when me saying, but the fact is, for such a person that seems to be so cutting edge, to really at their core be so Hollywood,
right,
actually to build something, that way, knowing what he actually did to that family. I don't know how he lives with himself, and to continue to carry that name, and like I said, that's how I feel.
You know what? You must be a voracious reader. Are you? Do you love to read?
No, I hate reading. I can't read. I'm like dyslexic. I pick up everything now.
So how? All right. So I guess
I'm a listener.
All right, good. So that's my first big miscast here. How do you accumulate such encyclopedic knowledge? You're really reaching back now decades in meaning, and you're in the moment. The other night, you are awesome on the Cosby cutting edge front of the thing. So how do you? So I thought reading. How do you keep this encyclopedia in your head? Because you're reaching back and forth across decades. We love this. Audiences love it. But you get online at the supermarket and they're like, I don't know what she was talking about. She was
I didn't know who I was for a long time, so I kept searching and I kept asking other people what they thought and how they found themselves and where they. And sometimes you cross people, so you find out the history of what really happened between certain groups and certain things that were happening, because some of the information doesn't add up and some of it doesn't make sense. So, and when you're, I think just being a mixed race person, that also my family does not fit any of the stereotypes that are on the Sicilians or the Black Americans. You start to try to figure out where you place and how does this work and who am I, and you have to study some history. When you look white and you find out that you are Black, and I lost my mother at a young age, and I had a lot of people who were very racist again in my family. And so for that, I wanted to search who my mother was because I knew she was a great woman. So doing that, I had to understand why we have the reaction we do to Black America, why white America reacts a certain way. What is the truth? What is our history? How do we move forward? Where can I stand where I can be of help? How can I make a positive step forward and add to the progress, like I said, as opposed to playing on things that are negative. So I've listened to a lot of people because I didn't know where I placed, and I was told always how to be. How to be someone else, but what I kind of went on a mission was to find out how to be. And I met with wonderful people when I did that film, which was, in my film I got to sit with, Phyllis Diller and Ray Romano and Kevin James and Paul Schaefer and Rita Rudner and Mooney and the last one of the last filmed interviews was Richard Pryor. I was in their house for 4 hours. In his house for 4 hours. And there was just so much that I had been exposed to, even though the film had been shut down, and it was quite. It's been quite a nightmare.
Well, let's go in there, but I just want to remember you did start this about self-discovery. Is the film part of your self-discovery? How does the film project? Go ahead. Yeah. How does the film project begin? The
project begins with It really started. It kind of begins with me with Aspen. I did an Aspen Comedy Festival, and I performed one night, and I was starting to become myself, but it didn't work on the big gala night. So I kind of had a lot of heat, and then was not good at the Hollywood politics, and they wanted me to be somebody that I wasn't. I was with white producers that were telling me, you're a young kid raised in the ghetto and you've had a hard time and blah, blah, blah. It's ridiculous. I went to boarding school in Greenwich, Connecticut. My mother got the key to the city of Paris. She sang in 7 languages and she was a concert pianist. And that's my black experience. Her friends were Jeffrey Holder and people.
Wow. Yeah.
My uncle choreographed Black and Blue on Broadway in Sophisticated Ladies, and he won the Tony, and I'd go to the Tony Awards. That was my black experience. So, for me to articulate that on stage was a problem, and I was only getting booked in like black comedy rooms, but then people like the heads of Brillstein Gray that handled Adam Sandler wanted me on the mainstream rooms, and it was too early for me. I couldn't figure out me then.
Right.
And so I started to make this film and try to find myself and studied other comedians, and I have like about 500 hours of footage of zigzagging across the country, interviewing comedians and trying to find out where I place and, well, who am I and how do I find me? And even if the world doesn't want to accept me.
Do you confront this question with them? Do they ever illuminate on this question as to whether